Hi there and welcome back to the Reducing Anxiety with CBT mini course. My name is Chris Piercy and today we're going to be talking about cognitive distortions. Now, what is a cognitive distortion, I hear you ask? It is a way of faulty thinking. So you'll have heard people say, oh, I'm a bit of a catastrophizer, I'm a bit of a black and white thinker. These kind of labels that people sometimes put on themselves are actually sometimes cognitive distortions. So there's 15 of them. I'm going to be going through them in today's video because it's important for you to understand which ones you're kind of perhaps guilty of. Because once you know which kind of inverted commas rules you're breaking, you can then kind of spot that more easily, and then you can get control of and rein in anxious thoughts more easily. So without any further ado, let's go into 15 different cognitive distortions. These are also available as a kind of cheat sheet download, so you don't have to kind of write all of this down. Don't worry about that. In no particular order, starting with filtering or negative filtering. Now, this is the idea where, let's say, the best example I can give is when I worked in a call center, and I'd take 100 calls a day. This is going back 20 odd years. I'd take 100 calls a day maybe, and let's say that 99 of them were like people saying, "Oh, thanks very much, really appreciate your help." And then I had one idiot who spoke to me like I was a piece of crap and shouted at me, whatever. I would then say, "Oh, I had a terrible day." It's like, filtering is the idea of taking out all of the good and focusing on that one bad thing that happened during the day. Black and white thinking or polarized thinking. This is the idea where things are either one thing or they are another. It's either a yes or it's a no. Now, in some situations in life, this is absolutely correct, but a lot of the time, people live in this grey area, and that's absolutely fine. So, why is this potentially damaging for kind of anxiety? Well, it's when you say, "Well, I only got 90% on the exam, so guess I'm a failure," because unless it's 100%, it's 0%. Overgeneralization. So this is the idea of taking one thing and then kind of spreading that as a kind of a blanket statement about absolutely everything. You know what overgeneralizing is, I'm sure. So example of this, I had a bad date. That means every single day I go on is going to be bad now. It's simply not true, is it? Jumping to conclusions. Now, this is kind of similar to the previous one about overgeneralizing, but not necessarily. A good example would be, "Oh, I don't think this person's going to like me because they're friends with that person." It's like, no proof of that whatsoever. So it's kind of thinking something with no proof behind it whatsoever. Catastrophizing, which is one of the things I hear most about in my therapy room. It's the idea of something tiny happening and all of a sudden, the world's ending. It's like, "Oh my God, I can't find my shoe. Where's my shoe?" Personalization. This is the idea where people believe that if they do something small that's like wrong, or I hate using the word wrong, if they do something small which they think is wrong, it's going to have a huge personalization. Now, this is the idea that someone will do something and then it's going to have a huge impact on things which are massively outside of their control, kind of like a butterfly effect type thing. And this includes things which are utterly irrational. So I'm sure you can see why that is something which would cause anxious thoughts. Control fallacies. Now, we have discussed control in some depth in the previous video, but this is the idea that things which happen in your life are either a direct result of outside forces or, again, down to exactly what you do. So there's a lot in there in terms of control, in terms of that kind of black and white thinking as well. And kind of overgeneralizing. So control's a lot of things. That's control fallacies. The fallacy of fairness. Life's not fair, as the eternal words of Jeremy Irons' Scar and the Lion King told us. And it isn't. The fallacy of fairness is where you go through life seeking out and believing that fairness should happen. And yeah, you're not wrong. Things should be fair. Life's not fair, though. No one promised us fairness, we just think that we should have it. So going through life thinking and believing and saying that, "Oh, this isn't fair and that's not fair and this isn't fair," surefire way of making yourself feel rubbish. Blaming. Pretty obvious, this one is when you're blaming people for stuff, blaming yourself for stuff. About as simple as that. the shoulders. Should have gone to the gym. I should go to the gym. I should call that person. I should have called that person. I should do this. I should do that. Saying should, according to who? It's the the age-old thing of feeling obligated to do things when that might not necessarily be the case. Emotional reasoning. Now, this is perhaps the ultimate cognitive distortion. It's the idea where if you feel something, then you must be something. But the truth is that our thoughts are not facts. They are just thoughts. So here's an example. Let's say you've been through a breakup, and then you say, well, they've gone to that other person. That person's quite attractive. So I feel really unattractive. And then it's that jump. Emotional reasoning is that jump from I feel attractive to I am unattractive. There isn't actually a logical connection between the two. So emotional reasoning is making that jump from I feel to I am. The fallacy of change. Now, this is the idea where people should perhaps change and do things differently in order to make us happy. Ultimately, we have no control over whether someone changes or not. We discussed that already in the previous video, and we only have control over our thoughts and our actions. Therefore, we are the ones responsible for our happiness. We cannot control whether people change or even want to change. So that is the fallacy of change. Global labeling or mislabeling. Now, this is the idea. I mean, this is a bit like overgeneralizing, to be honest, but this is the idea where there's one or two instances of something happening, and then that's true for the entire world, or a huge blanket statement about someone. For example, let's say you meet someone for the first time and they were rude to you, and the second time you met them they were also like rude and snappy, and we just then say they are a rude and snappy person, rather than perhaps giving them the benefit of the doubt that they might have had a bad day, or things aren't going great for them at the moment. So that is mislabeling. In terms of getting rid of anxiety, it's actually really important to be comfortable with the idea of admitting when we've made a mistake, admitting when we're wrong, and kind of owning that. And finally, you reach the end, 15 of these. The 15th one, the heaven's reward fallacy. This is the idea, I mean, it's got a crossover with the fairness thing. This is the idea that if you do something good and you're a good person, this is going to have a direct response to how much good actually happens in your life. If you do good things will happen to you. No proof that is actually the case, sadly. So today's exercise for video 3. So first of all, I'd recommend that you download the Cognitive Distortions download. That was bad wording, but get that in front of you because you probably haven't remembered that. Maybe a few of those are stuck on your head, but what I like to do is to read through those or watch back through them if you can stand listening to me talk about them again, and maybe pick out a few which feel they might be like resonate with you, feel like they sound like that's kind of what I do, because some of them probably will have done. Now I want you to go through the thing that you wrote, video 1. Hopefully you've got that in front of you. If you haven't, pause the video. Now that you've got that in front of you, I want you to go through and do a kind of 3-step process with cognitive distortions. So first off, go through and write down a few, as many as you like really, a few different things that you've written down, thoughts that you believe might be a cognitive distortion. So write it down, then ask yourself which cognitive distortion or distortions are at play here, and then rewrite that thought in a much healthier, non-cognitive distortion way. That might sound very confusing at the moment, so let me give you an example. The guy I'm dating says that we're not a good match and he doesn't think we should see each other anymore, so I must be really unattractive. I'm going to be single forever. So, what cognitive distortions are at play? First one, let's look at I'm going to be single forever. Now, this is black and white thinking. Just because one person doesn't like you doesn't mean that you're going to be on your own forever. I am unattractive. Now, probably jumping to conclusions, that one. Unless they actually specifically said you're unattractive, there's no evidence to jump to I am unattractive. That's a separate thing. And further to that, just because they say you're unattractive doesn't mean you're unattractive anyway. So this is a jumping to conclusion situation. There could be any number of reasons why they didn't think you were suited for each other, including that they don't think you're very suited to each other. Could have been completely down the line honest with you on that. But just because someone doesn't think you're a good match doesn't mean that you're unattractive. So that is a jumping to conclusions thing. So how might you rewrite this to be a better thing? Well, I would write something along the lines of, the guy I'm dating said we weren't a good match. I really appreciate it that someone was honest with me, and now I can find someone who is a good match for me. Hopefully that example gives you a good idea of what you should be doing. So go through what you wrote from the first video, pick out as many thoughts as you want and just kind of practice going through them. Look at the cognitive distortions, see which ones you're kind of typically breaking, and then rewrite those thoughts so they're more healthy and more helpful to you. I will see you in video 4.